I am the Space Quest historian. Here's my hot take of the day. The Pandora Directive is not only the best FMV game of all time, but a top-ranking candidate for the best game of all time. Not just the best adventure game of all time, best game, as in any game, any genre. So, I guess if you came here for a roasting, you're out of luck. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect game, it has its flaws, and as per tradition, we will go over those in unnecessarily scrutinous details, but on the whole, the Pandora Directive is not only a great game, but it's also insanely ambitious to the point where you'd think the whole thing would just collapse under its own weight, but somehow it doesn't, and the end result is nothing short of astonishing. Okay, let's get a quick plot summary out of the way so I can start gushing like a middle-aged housewife having an affair with a particularly well-endowed plumber. As per another tradition, I am going to spoil the shit out of this game, so blah blah, if you haven't played it, blah blah, you're on risk, blah, fuck it, let's get on with it. Tex is hired by an older gentleman named Gordon Fitzpatrick to find his estranged friend Thomas Malloy, who seems to have gone mysteriously missing. Thomas was a research scientist along with Mr. Fitzpatrick, but they weren't just your run-of-the-mill lab rats. No, they worked at the fucking military base in Roswell, New Mexico. Yeah, this game came out in 1996. The X-Files were in their 4th season and one of the most popular TV shows on the air at the time, so everyone had little green men on their brains, and Pandora Directive was certainly aiming to ride high on the current zeitgeist. In fact, it wouldn't be more than 2 years later that the X-Files got its own FMV point-and-click adventure game, which wasn't half as good as the Pandora Directive, but that's a story for another time. So, in this story, of course the urban legend of an alien spacecraft crash landing in Roswell in the 1950s was real, and of course we've got government agencies running around spinning conspiracies and trying to keep the whole thing under wraps so they can use alien technology for their own devious ends. So the game loses a few points on originality on that front, but it's easy to look past all that because the game really does try to put a fresh spin on the whole thing. It's not like Tex goes full on Fox Mulder and tries to blow the lid off the whole thing. He just wants to solve the case, get paid, and move on to the next thing, and maybe stop the US government from instigating World War IV with all this shit in the process. But that's just an added bonus, really. So, of course, shit starts unraveling pretty quickly as it becomes apparent that Thomas Malloy isn't just missing because he got lost on his way home from work or moved to Canada and forgot to leave a forwarding address. No, he's been hiding out from the main baddies of this game, the NSA, who are not just the National Security Agency anymore, but have switched name to the far less benevolent sounding National Surveillance Agency.
National Surveillance Agency.
And he's been holed up in this secluded warehouse continuing his work on making sense of the alien technology on the Roswell spacecraft using whatever bits and pieces he could smuggle out of the military facility before the government put the whole thing on lockdown. Tex's role in all this is to not just track down the whereabouts of Mr. Malloy, but also find 6 puzzle boxes that Malloy sent out to close friends and associates, which, when put together, will reveal the location of a second crashed spaceship that the government doesn't know about, which is presumably still chock full of alien goodies. One has to wonder how utterly fucking useless these aliens are at flying their own interstellar spacecraft if they manage to crash not 1 but 2 of them on our planet, but the game glosses over that detail, so in my headcanon, the aliens probably just got blind-ass drunk one fateful afternoon cruising around the solar system and forgot how to steer the fucking things. The puzzle boxes are a bit of an oddity as well, but I suppose Malloy just suffers from a bad case of Stoff syndrome. The people he sent them to would not only have to come together with each of the box's contents and hook them up to form some sort of sci-fi video player that gives them the coordinates to the second crashed spaceship, but also figure out how to open the damn things in the first place. And since Malloy apparently put way too much trust into the cerebral faculties of his associates, it naturally falls upon Tex to actually do this for them, which manifests itself gameplay-wise as a series of befuddling logic puzzles, which frankly had me reaching for the cheat codes to skip them entirely within the first 5 minutes of fucking around with these metal hunks of horseshit. Cheat codes which are mercifully provided by the in-game hint system, but I'll get back to all of that. Tex's client, Gordon Fitzpatrick, was one of those people who received the puzzle box, but he doesn't let Tex know that right off the bat. Of course, it isn't until Tex is in way too deep that Fitzpatrick lets him in on the fact that there's more to this business than a simple missing persons case, and by then we already know that there are 5 other boxes floating around out there in the hands of a cast of oddball characters. Let's just run down those characters real quick. There's Elijah Witt, a novelist who specializes in writing far-out stories about, you guessed it, extraterrestrial encounters. Oliver Edson, an explorer with a specialty in Mayan legends and folklore. Lucy Love, Malloy's wife, whose primary occupation involves making crazy eyes while gyrating atop a grand piano. Archie Ellis, a paranoid nerd who runs a beaded curtain type shop that sells herbal tea and wacky books on alien conspiracies. And Regan Madsen, Malloy's estranged daughter. That last one turns out to be a bit of a red herring though, because it turns out there are only 5 boxes, not 6. Regan never received the box, but she only pretends to. In fact, she snatched her box, pardon the innuendo, from Archie Ellis and plans to hand it over to the bad guys along with the other 4 boxes so she can profit big time and live the high life while the world burns around her. Way to keep Daddy's memory alive there, sweet cheeks. And who are the bad guys? Well, on the outset, it's the National Surveillance Agency, led by a very intense, very trigger-happy, and very intimidating dude named Jackson Cross, whose favorite pastime is, well...
I enjoy killing people. I find it very satisfying.
Okay, well, everyone needs a hobby, I guess. But it turns out the agency isn't exactly bankrolling this whole endeavor. In fact, Cross is a bit of a loose cannon, and it's fair to say he's gone a bit off the deep end trying to recover these boxes and the alien treasure trove they lead to. It's not really specified exactly what he plans to do with all of this once he gets his hands on it, but he's in cahoots with Regan, so he's probably in it for the,
Money!
Yeah. Anyway, after a lot of twists and turns involving throwing black-clad government agents off of rooftops...
Fatality.
And hoodwinking old ladies...
Wish you my nephew.
Tex finally tracks down Malloy in his secret warehouse and...
Malloy, don't move! No!
Well, that sucks. Despite having now solved our case and found the elusive Mr. Malloy as well as witnessed him being perforated into Swiss cheese, we're not quite ready to call it a day yet. Tex is in too deep. He wants to know what the big secret is, and there's only one way to get to the bottom of all this.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more
Boxes.
Also, there's the small matter of Tex already having had an unpleasant encounter with Mr. Cross over the trifling matter of having thrown one of his agents over a rooftop during a chase to recover one of the boxes, so, you know, it's either that or getting his head blown off. Long story short, Tex earns the trust of all the 5 key players, tracks down their boxes, because of course all of these dumbasses either manage to misplace their boxes somewhere or let someone steal it from them, and opens the boxes because, as mentioned before, Malloy vastly overestimated these dumbasses' abilities to do it on their own, and assembles them, which these dumbasses are also incapable of doing on their own. Look, I understand that this stuff contains sensitive classified material, and you couldn't just stick these things in a safety deposit box somewhere, but come on, maybe you should have given this whole puzzle box thing some extra thought, because as it turns out, this glorified VCR that tells him the location of the second crashed spaceship doesn't just run off a couple of D-cell batteries. Nah, this thing needs a fucking alien power cell to boot up. And where do you get one of those, you may ask? Oh, Roswell, of course. Where else? Yeah, Tex just casually breaks into a highly classified top-secret abandoned military installation and goes spelunking around its foreboding dark corridors, only to find that it's not quite as abandoned as you might think. What the fuck was Malloy thinking? How did he expect 2 old geezers, a petite nightclub dancer, and a scrawny little conspiracy nut to get their hands on an alien power cell from deep within the bowels of the Roswell military complex? And I very much doubt Regan would be able to worm her way past security, no matter how many coquettishly seductive smiles she could throw at him. But let's not forget, she's not even supposed to be here at all. The box she claims she got was actually stolen off of this aforementioned scrawny guy Archie Ellis, and the last guy on the list, Oliver Edson, went missing and is presumably busy decomposing somewhere in a jungle, so even if he was still breathing, I wouldn't put too much stock into his abilities either. What the fuck kind of plan was this? I mean, maybe Malloy had another alien power cell lying around his warehouse lab, but it's clear he didn't want to be found, so even if he did have one, what, did he forget to FedEx it out alongside his little party boxes here? Anyway, with the device assembled and Mr. Swiss Cheese's message delivered, Tex goes on a search for the second crashed spaceship, which, as it turns out, went down somewhere in the Peruvian jungle. After pissing around a Mayan temple for a bit, solving a bunch of logic puzzles, and, Yeah, just forget that. I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to happen. He finds the spaceship parked conveniently on the other side, waiting for him. Mr. Barrel of Laughs here shows up one last time to throw a final cockblock at gunpoint into the mix, as well as reveal his not-so-surprising tryst with Regan, but he's ultimately thwarted when Tex sets the UFO to self-destruct and escapes with Fitzpatrick's generous check in hand, and the knowledge that the world is now free of at least one gun-toting government lunatic and his money-grubbing sidekick. All of this leads to one of 7 possible endings, depending on how you played the game, but realistically speaking, there are only 5 endings, and I'll explain why in a minute. There are 3 main paths you can take through the game: good guy, bad guy, and a middling somewhere in between kind of guy, and they all wrap up the story in one of 7 ways. The bad guy path has 4 different endings, the middling road has 2, and the good guy path has 2 endings, at least on paper. And by paper I mean the box and all the promotional material. In actual fact, there are only 5 different endings because the middle road endings are recycled from the other paths. One of them has Chelsea run off with a hologram of Cary Grant, which is bizarrely one of the good guy endings, and the other sees Tex give up his life of being a PI in favor of becoming a circus clown, which, as you may have guessed, is also one of the bad guy endings, and yeah, that one is a bit weird. But I'm not going to tear into this game for slightly overpromising this aspect, because the fact that the game even has this many endings and the amount of variations of content these 3 paths present is more than ambitious and rewarding enough. This whole multiple path thing is honestly the reason why I put this game so high on my best games of all time list. I know a lot of games do that these days, but back in the mid-90s, this kind of replay value was astounding, and to have it in an FMV game with a shitload of video on top speaks to ambition that is nothing short of mind-melting. The way you navigate these paths mechanically is also truly a stroke of genius. You don't get to pick a path from a list, nor is it really obvious that the game even has branching paths in the first place unless you happen to read the blurb on the back of the box. Remember the conversation trees from Under a Killing Moon? They were a pretty novel way of circumventing your traditional Monkey Island-ish dialogue trees where you pick exactly what the character is going to say. Instead, the conversation options convey the mood in which you respond. In Killing Moon, this was just a fun gimmick that made you wonder exactly what Tex was going to say with the particular mood you picked from the list, often with fairly hilarious results.
Last night someone broke into my pawn shop. I don't usually have anything of great value, but yesterday I gave out a fair amount of cash for an extremely valuable diamond bracelet.
My deductive powers tell me the bracelet's no longer on the premises.
Brilliant work, Murphy.
But in this game, the dialogue options actually serve a greater purpose than just determining what kind of sarcastic quip Tex is going to throw out. The way you navigate these dialogue trees is what sneakily determines what path you end up on, which is a brilliant idea if you ask me. That the way you treat people is ultimately a reflection on what kind of character the protagonist is going to turn out to be. It feels like you're genuinely molding and shaping the main character to become the kind of person you want to see him become at the end. The puzzles and major story beats don't change significantly with each playthrough, but the mood with which they convey the story changes quite dramatically. On the good guy path, Tex takes the high road whenever he's presented with opportunities to make the big score at the cost of his moral integrity, and conversely, on the bad guy path, he's given the opportunity to throw this uphill battle courtship with Chelsea along with every remaining shred of self-respect down the toilet, and instead plummet dick first into the much more readily available and willing relationship with the sketchy and fairly obviously morally bankrupt Regan. The good guy path takes some precise maneuvering, as you could argue it does in real life, because it involves fending off a lot of tempting opportunities to take the easy road and just say fuck it. Especially on the romantic side, because while it looks like Tex is finally about to crack the 10 feet thick concrete shell around Chelsea's heart at the beginning of the story, she also seems to have developed a certain restlessness about hanging out at the newsstand on Chandler Avenue all day, and wants to see what would happen if she tried for a fresh start somewhere else entirely. So one of the earliest pivotal conversations you'll have to navigate is setting up a dinner date with Chelsea, and this deceptively innocent banter is actually where you'll make your first irrevocable decision about the story's outcome. Now, regardless of what you say to her, you still make plans for dinner, Tex still gets knocked out and accidentally stands her up, and she still fucks off to Arizona and spends the rest of the game there, but whether or not she returns at the end of the game, and how wide her welcoming arms are when she does, is all determined by what you do at this juncture. Well, not entirely. You still have to keep on the straight and narrow and turn down Regan's, other brand of warm embrace, otherwise, well, it's clown time. Seriously, this never stops being weird. If you do manage to stick the good guy landing, however, you're rewarded with a very oh, shall we say, happy ending.
Yes. Yes, I want to learn. I want to learn.
Yeehaw indeed. But if you fuck all of this up and decide to play Tex as the meanest bastard imaginable, Tex may find himself on a truly dark and depressing path, drowning his sorrows at the end of every day, and this is definitely not played for laughs. It is in fact heart-wrenchingly serious shit. So let's talk about the mood of the game for a bit, because if you compare this game to its predecessor, Under a Killing Moon, you'll find that the storytelling has matured quite extensively. Whereas Under a Killing Moon was a predominantly comedic affair with an underpinning of seriousness, Pandora Directive is the opposite. This game feels a lot darker, and I'm not just talking about the story itself. Whereas Under a Killing Moon was all vivid colors and bright environments, Pandora Directive plays a lot with shadows and mood lighting, both in the FMVs but also in the gameplay environments. It runs in the same engine as Under a Killing Moon, or at least an iteration of the same engine, but whereas Under a Killing Moon looked like it might as well have taken place during the daytime, Pandora Directive definitely feels like it takes place in the shadows. The FMVs especially shine in this regard, or I guess the opposite of shine really, but what I mean is, they're fucking spectacular for 1996. It helps tremendously, of course, that they were directed by an actual movie director. Whereas Under a Killing Moon was directed by lead actor and co-designer Chris Jones, Pandora Directive brought in Australian filmmaker Adrian Carr to helm the FMV production. And while you may be tempted to scoff at Mr. Carr's most well-known credit at the time, which was the movie adaptation of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, any concerns of his abilities are quickly dissuaded by the absolutely astonishing cinematography of this game. The man has fucking chops, no question about that. Every shot is expertly lit and crafted with impressive care and attention to detail, which is even more impressive given that the whole thing was shot on blue screen. Still, nobody's perfect though. Sometimes he forgets to put the boom mic near the actors, which is especially noticeable during this scene where Tex meets Archie Ellis for the first time.
You always sneak up on people like that?
So thank God for the closed captioning. And let's be honest, this whole moving the camera around thing looks a bit jank because they had to shoot the actors first and then painstakingly animate the pre-rendered backgrounds to match the camera movements after the fact. This was before motion control cameras were anywhere near the budget they had for this game, so it's sort of impressive that they even tried, but every once in a while the characters seem to just sort of float or hover above the floor, and it's one of those can't unsee once you've seen it kind of things. They keep these shots to a minimum though, and the camera stays locked off for most of the FMVs, so it doesn't really ruin the suspension of disbelief much. On the technical side, they managed to fix the stuttering frame rate issue of Under a Killing Moon where the video renderer seemed to run out of breath 10 seconds into the video playback, so things run pretty smoothly, and in a consistent resolution too. No more of those postage stamp sized FMVs. Every FMV plays in the same resolution, although not what you'd technically call full screen, but it's pretty damn close enough that you wouldn't mind. And again, none of that rat bastard eye-wobbling interlaced video, thank fucking Christ. The acting is also pretty stellar across the board, not just from the top billed, hey, I know that guy, what's his name again? Actors, but pretty much all of the cast. The top bills include Kevin McCarthy, who was a big actor in the 1960s and 70s. If you're a classic horror movie buff, you might recognize him from the original 1956 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Tanya Roberts, who was a Bond girl in the 1985 installment A View to a Kill, aka the Bond flick with Christopher Walken in it.
I gotta have more
Boxes.
And Barry Corbin, who has been in a bunch of shit, but most noticeably and memorably, at least to me, he was the gruff NORAD general in one of my favorite childhood movies, War Games.
After very careful consideration, sir, I've come to the conclusion that your new defense system sucks.
Anyway, most of the Chandler Avenue faces from the last game also make a reappearance, with the notable exception of Franny the Pizza Gal, who sadly passed away between games. Not the character, the actress herself. But Louis, Rook, and Chelsea are still here, and it's a very comforting feeling to be starting out the game in a familiar environment with people you knew from the last game. Even Clint the chocolate junkie makes a reappearance, but he's moved out of the dumpster behind Rook's pawn shop, and now he owns a chocolate stand on Coit Tower, which is kinda like a raging alcoholic owning a liquor store. In fact, it's exactly like that, because predictably he's out of everything, including his signature
bliss on a biscuit.
We've also got a couple of new faces, my favorite being Crazy Gary, the ranting street preacher whose primary tenets involve a vegetarian diet and alcohol. This actor really hams up the scene in the most glorious way imaginable, especially when he sends Tex off on a quest for
a nice single malt scotch.
And being a vegetarian, he's also tremendously fun to antagonize.
So I ate 3 chili cheese dogs today for lunch. I don't see that's any of your business.
The lunch of the damned!
And then of course there's Nilo, the amoral landlord of the Ritz Hotel, whose way of counting money never fails to put a smile on my face.
That's more like it.
The real standout, though, is Chris Jones himself. Now, Chris was Tex right from the start back in 1989, but back then he was just a cardboard cutout sprite. Under Killing Moon demonstrated that he could actually turn in a pretty decent performance, but between Killing Moon and Pandora, his acting chops have fucking skyrocketed. Sure, he's not gonna win an Academy Award or anything, but for a dude with no formal training whose previous acting credits were limited to backyard movies he made with his friends back in the 80s, his performance here is nothing short of stunning. And he only gets better from here on. Just wait until you see him square off against Michael York in Overseer, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Whew, I think I've already rambled on a great deal, and we haven't even talked about the meat and potatoes of the game yet. The puzzles in this game are once again split between standard inventory puzzles and logic puzzles, but the logic puzzles have definitely started elbowing their way in. In Under Killing Moon, you had stuff like piecing together bits of torn up paper shreds, simple decoding puzzles, and this frankly atrocious horse shit with the cryo chamber that still to this day doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. But for the most part, it was all pick this shit up, use it with this other shit kind of stuff. But with Pandora, they really went fucking hog wild. The puzzle boxes themselves, as you would expect, require you to solve a puzzle to open them, and these get fairly convoluted, especially this one that expects you to learn the Mayan calendar to open, but you kinda saw that coming. I mean, it's in the word puzzle box. Where things really start to go off the rails, though, are with every other excuse the team used to throw in a logic puzzle just to fuck with you. Some of them are just flimsy to the point of being contrived, like this early one where you need to get into Rusty the Clown's gag shop. Mac Malden gives you the key to unlock the front door, but he conveniently, for the game designers at least, forgot to tell you how to bypass the electronic security the cops installed on top of locking the front door. And rather than go back and slap the solution out of Malden, Tex just goes, oh well, guess I'll just have to figure it out. Why, Tex? And later, this fellow called the Black Arrow Killer, who's actually one of Jackson Cross's operatives, steals one of the puzzle boxes and stashes it in the sewer while he's being chased by Tex, but he somehow has time to install an explosive mine on it that, you guessed it, can only be disarmed by solving a logic puzzle. The worst part is just before the ending when you're pissing around inside this Mayan temple. I already mentioned this part, but I didn't quite elaborate on just how excruciating it is. Not only is the temple itself a maze, fuck you, but it's also a gauntlet of logic puzzles. There's 5 of them in total before you make your way out of the temple, and not only are these puzzles hard as balls, you also need to explore the maze thoroughly to find items that you need to solve the puzzles with. This whole section bogs the game down to an absolute fucking crawl, and it all happens right before the end game, so the temptation to cheat your way through them is almost irresistibly strong. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, the game actually gives you this option. Each logic puzzle has its own cheat code for bypassing it entirely, and the in-game hint system will give you the cheat code if you just badger it long enough. This doesn't work if you're playing the game on gamer mode. I forgot to mention there are actually 2 difficulty levels in the game, and gamer mode is essentially this game's idea of hard mode, where not only are the cheat codes disabled, but all the logic puzzles are also on a timer. And to that I say, fuck that. I've never finished this game on hard mode, which is sort of a pity because in addition to making the logic puzzles absolutely brutal, it also contains additional puzzles along the way, like having to distract a roaming janitor inside this government facility, and even an extra room inside the Mayan temple that shoots fireballs at you. Okay, you know what? Fuck this part as well. You can scoff all you want. I'll take easy mode any day of the week. The worst logic puzzle, by far, is the game's final puzzle, where you're meant to set the spaceship to self-destruct by clicking these buttons in a specific order. The sequence is absurdly long, and as far as I can gather, there are no hints as to what order it is. It's just trial and error until you get it right. That's not to say there aren't some satisfying puzzles in this game, it really boils down to personal preference. I'm not a big fan of logic puzzles, but others are. I'm not gonna shit on their parade, because they're certainly gonna get bang for their buck in this one. And they are broken up by a few stretches of more garden variety lateral thinking puzzles where you pick shit up and use it on some other shit in the game world. There's one particularly long stretch of this when Tex breaks into Roswell, and this bit absolutely fills me with dread and pulse-spiking anxiety to this day, because it turns out this place isn't quite as abandoned as you might think. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the bane of my fucking existence, Mr. Alien Green Fart Cloud, live und in Farbe. And this thing can go fuck itself. Every second that passes, this thing slowly creeps up from the bowels of the facility towards Tex, and it is fucking hungry. I mean, it's been cooped up here for decades ever since the base was shut down and quarantined, lying in a dormant state and sleeping off a full-course banquet of scientists and military personnel, but that was decades ago, all the way back in the 1940s, and Tex is just the snack it's been waiting for all this time. So this whole section is on a timer until Tex can scrounge up the materials for a containment device and trap Goo Boy here so he can explore the rest of the compound in peace. And there's about 10 million steps to this process that require you to search every nook and cranny of this facility, opening barricaded doors and piecing these things together with various bits scattered in hard-to-spot places. Now you'd think they'd let up on the typical Tex Murphy 3D pixel hunting for this bit while you're scrambling for your life, but oh no, fuck you. Most of the other inventory puzzles are fairly innocuous, and in true Tex Murphy fashion, you'll be spending more time actually finding these items than solving the puzzles themselves. But where this game really shines is in the conversations. I've already praised this element to high heaven, but it cannot be overstated. You'll want to spend the rest of eternity going over every combination of responses Tex can give, even if you know they're gonna lead down a catastrophically unhelpful path, just to see how Chris Jones expertly plays off the, once again, astonishingly large cast of supporting characters. And this time the game actually rewards you for sticking to a certain flavor of attitude along the way with the diverging paths and multiple endings, so it really is a joy to play over and over again. Obviously, the FMV compression is what it is, given that this game came out in the mid-90s, but it was actually as good as it got for its time. And thankfully, the Access team once again eschewed the standard Venetian blind interlaced video presentation that other contemporary FMV games employed, and thank fuck for that. Sure, the compromise is that the FMVs don't exactly play in full screen, but it's close enough, and I'd rather take a bit of squinting than going fucking blind after playing this for less than an hour. There's actually been an official 4K remaster in the work for ages. The team found the original tapes that they shot all the video on and had them digitized and upscaled to 4K. And I mean like really fucking upscaled. Like you can see the pores on people's skin kind of upscaled. At the time of making this video, that remaster isn't out yet, and it has been on hold for some time while the team is busy, and I kid you not, making indoor golf simulators, but I'm crossing my fingers and hoping to sweet Satan they'll get back to it soon. Likewise, I probably should have mentioned this in my Under Killing Moon video, but that game also had its footage recovered and upscaled. Well, sort of. Funny story, after recovering all the tapes used to shoot the original FMVs, they were digitized and upscaled in-house. Now, Pandora got a full 4K upscale because they sent the tapes to a professional facility, and the in-house upscale of Killing Moon was just an HD upscale, meant for, I guess, testing purposes or something, but before they could ship the tapes off to the professionals and have a full 4K upscaling done, someone, and I'm not naming names, but he plays a private eye and wears a fedora, fucking threw the tapes out thinking that they weren't needed anymore. So yeah, we could get a remaster of Under Killing Moon 2, but it would only be in HD quality, like a DVD, which I think we can all agree is just not up to scratch and should just be thrown in the bin. I'm just kidding, fucking do it guys, who gives a shit if we can see Tex's nostril hair wafting in the wind on the fire escape. HD is still 1280 by 720, the original game was 640 by 480, and most of the FMVs played in a quarter of that, and you're telling me HD is just not good enough? Let's fucking go! Anyway, I got off topic a bit. I think I'm done anyway. In summary, if you haven't played the Pandora Directive yet, well, first of all, why'd you watch this fucking video? And second, go do it! As I said at the start of this video, this game is easily in my top 3 of all-time best computer games of forever, despite all the overblown nitpicking shit I just gave it in this video. Now, a big thanks to the Tex Murphy community on Discord for providing me with save games so I could capture footage of all the different paths. This is a very long game, so if I had to play through the whole game 7 times just to show everything this game had to offer, this video would never have been finished. Now, I've left a link to their Discord in the video description. Be nice to them. They're really, really good folk. And with that, it's time to hang up the fedora again for now, but I'll be back to tackle the next game, Tex Murphy Overseer, which thankfully is a much more manageable game to cover, given that it was a lot less ambitious for a variety of reasons. We'll get to all that in due time, but for now, take care, and I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye! Anyway, with the device assembled and Mr. Swiss Cheese's message delivered, Tex goes on a search for the second crashed spaceship, which, as it turns out, went down somewhere in a Peruvian jungle. I guess it's technically the Peruvian jungle. Anyway, with the device assembled and Mr. Swiss Cheese's message that's very hard to say. Anyway, with the device assembled and Mr. Swiss Cheese's message delivered, fucking Christ. Mr. Barrel of Laughs here shows up one last time to throw a final cockplug at... Cockplug? The fuck is a cockplug? Well, I know what it is, but don't think about that too much. In actual fact, there are only 5 different endings because the middle road endings are recycled from the other paths. One of them... Did I say 5? I did say 5. Good. I can read my own script. Fuck you. But in this game, the dialogue options actually have serve a greater... Wow, that is a hell of a typo in the script. So, one of the earliest pivotal conversations you'll have to navigate is setting up a dinner date with Chelsea, and this deceptively innocent banter is actually where you'll make your first irrevocable decision. But whereas Under a Killing Moon looked like it might as well have been taking place during the daytime, goddammit, I had a burp right there and it did not want to wait. On the technical side, they managed to fizz the stuttering frame rate. I love fizzing frame rates. Mac Malden gives you a key to unlock the front door, but he conveniently, for the game designers at least, game designer emphasis. Mac Malden gives you the key to unlock the front door, but he conveniently, for the game designers at least, forgot to tell you how to bypass the electronic security the cops... I almost got through that. I'm not a big fan of logic puzzles, but others are. I'm not gonna shit on their parade, because they're certainly gonna get their bang for their buck in this. The bang it, the bucket, and the bang it, the bucket, and the fuck off. I'm not a big fan of logic puzzles, but others are, and I'm not gonna shit on their parade, because they're certainly gonna get the bang for the buck. Why is this so hard to say? I'm not a human beatboxer, for God's sakes.